Joel Souza, for my money, was one of the most disappointing people on the stand during the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial. In his interview with Vanity Fair, it becomes clearer that things on and off the set of the movie Rust were murkier than many people have perhaps realized. I've said before that we have unfinished business in this case, and the director provides, I think, a few reminders in this regard.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. This is part 2 of our analysis of Joel Souza's statement that he made to Vanity Fair. You may remember in part 1 he was asked, when did you understand what happened? And he said, well, my ears were ringing and it's suddenly like you're looking through a camera, and I was sort of querying that sort of assessment of it, because he's saying everything except saying, I knew I'd been shot. And then he said, my initial thought that I was very angry. I was furious at that moment. Now, that's not really a thought, that's a feeling, that's an emotion that is passing through him. It's not really got anything to do with a cognitive process. And so I think it is interesting that he tells Vanity Fair that his first response to being shot was anger. Not just anger, he says, I was very angry, I was furious. And yet, very angry, furious Souza maintained his silence right through 2 trials for almost 3 years. I mean, we really are dealing with
a man with breathtaking anger management issues.
But I think there's something more we need to look at here, and we're going to try and get to that in the second analysis.
What more than that?
Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're interested in the whole Rust thing, I'm one of the few YouTube creators that I know of that covered the Rust incident from the early time, in real time, when it was playing out. And I think there are more than 100 episodes dealing with this particular case. So you could do worse in terms of someone with a very intimate knowledge of a lot of the details of this particular case. And I think some of that's going to shine through once again in this analysis. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, before we deal with the next section, just a reminder that we'll continue to unpack the Netflix series American Murder, Laci Peterson. But we also want to deal with one aspect that the Netflix series doesn't really touch on, and that was Scott's mother's relationship with Laci. What was it? Remember Cindy Watts and Shanann Watts, mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws? Did they get along? Do they normally get along? Well, how about Jackie and Laci? And I'll be sharing information that you may not know about from a fascinating inside source. Okay, so let's get going with this Vanity Fair article. So Souza is asked, do you know if Helena was still alive at that point? And he answers, Helena is other people's family. She was my friend, but she's got a husband and a son and a mom and a dad and sister. Those are things that are more their business to speak about. So this is where, to my mind, things get iffy and weird. Souza is asked a perfectly simple question. Do you know if Helena was still alive? You know, you're both lying there in the church. Was she still alive? And it seems like Souza doesn't want to say anything about it. I mean, he does a complete dodge of the question. So look at what we're dealing with. He's in the church. She's his colleague. In his answer, he calls her his friend. He's furious about what happened. He breaks his silence after 3 years, only to still be extremely cagey about the obvious. Do you mind if I answer the question? Yes, she was alive. Yes, she was moving. Yes, she was in pain. We know because she said in the church that she couldn't feel her legs, and according to an LA Times report, while she lay on the floor bleeding, she also said that was no good. That was no good at all. And yet, for reasons unknown, Souza says effectively, those are things that aren't my business to talk about. It's quite an interesting word that he uses there, business. Now, if you think I'm being pedantic about Souza not dealing with certain questions, you might say, he if he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't need to talk about it. It's fair. There's nothing strange about that. Well, his response is the same when he's asked about Baldwin. He's asked, do you remember what Alec was doing after it happened? His response, I couldn't tell you what anyone in there was doing unless they had hands on me. Really, I couldn't tell you what anyone was doing. I mean, holy fuckamole, he just said that he was shot and that he saw everything around him like a cameraman looking through his lens. That was one of his first answers. And he literally used these words. Suddenly you're seeing people running around. Okay, tell me about the people you saw running around. Well, now he can't tell you what he saw. And when he's asked about how he found out Helena died, right, there's almost a third cryptic answer in a row, a third dodge. So he's asked, how did you find out? Meaning, how did you find out that she died? He answers, I think I'll keep that for me. But I did find out, and it was crushing in a way that is difficult to put into words. And it's quite strange. He's a storyteller. He co-wrote the script for us. And now suddenly he can't put things into words. He says, there was an emptiness and just an absolute devastation. Now he can't even answer a simple question like how he found out that Helena had died. He says, I think I'll keep that for me. He's so furious after 3 years, he's still not going to say anything about it. I must say that makes me pretty angry. Souza does have a lot to say about nothing to do with the shooting, such as what Helena's husband did. He's asked, did you speak with Helena's husband? And then there's this long answer. Matt Hutchins, I'm hesitant about speaking for the people who got hurt by this, but I'm going to tell you this about Matt Hutchins. Matt came out there as quickly as he could get out there, and he brought his son. He came there to take care of people. The man just lost his wife. If I lost my wife, I would be a quivering mass of jello, and I would be lashing out in every direction I could. I wouldn't be in my right mind. Matt came out there, and the job that he put on himself was to make sure people were okay. I've never seen anything like it. I hated, as this thing went on, that he got arrested. The press would try to follow him and take pictures. So he goes into all of this detail about something that really is really irrelevant to his experience in that church. And then arguably the best question is asked. The Vanity Fair reporter says, we saw a number of cases. Assistant Director Dave Halls took a plea bargain for negligence with a handgun. Hannah Gutierrez Reed was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Baldwin was charged with that, but the case was dismissed. In your opinion, was justice done? What a great question. And this is how he answers it. I don't know. And I don't know what that even is anymore. I'll be very honest with you about that. No one feels very good about someone going to jail. Well, you know what? No one feels very good about somebody dying in that way. But he doesn't say that. And so, I don't know, it's cop-out number. I don't know what number. I've lost count. In the Russ case, we have a weird legal jumping castle where Hannah may actually escape through the same loophole Baldwin created. And who knows, that may start a trend. Barry Morphew might be next, and then Scott Peterson. How would you feel about that? Maybe Chris Watts could find a procedural blunder as well. Is that justice?
Is that legal?
I will make it legal.
I mean, Judge Summer still has to rule on Hannah's case, and personally, I hope the judge herself has to sit through that whole trial again, because somewhere along the line, she seemed, in my opinion, to lose the thread of this case. If she dismisses this case and Hannah is allowed to go free, I think that will reflect on the judge's character. And Hannah could and should sue then for wrongful imprisonment. I mean, I think it was legally highly questionable to call the evidence, which wasn't even from the crime scene, as admitted more than a year later, potential evidence that got the case thrown out to begin with. Anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. Don't miss part 3 in this series, which we'll look at in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.